An elderly man with dementia walked into his backyard one October morning, saw a large gray shape moving through the mist, and decided, with complete certainty, that someone had left a dog in his yard. His daughter, a wildlife veterinarian who had secretly brought an orphaned baby elephant home 2 nights earlier, watched from the kitchen window. She did not correct him. What happened over the next 2 weeks, between a man slowly losing his memory and a baby elephant who had already lost his herd, is the kind of story that does not fit inside any category except the most important one. Drop your city or country in the comments. We love knowing where these stories reach. Now, enjoy watching. The yard was still dark when Arthur stepped outside. 6 in the morning, October. The kind of cold that had not fully committed yet, just enough to show your breath and remind you that winter was coming. He had his jacket on, a handful of carrots in his pocket, and the expression of a man with somewhere to be. Through the barn doorway, something large and gray turned to look at him. Arthur smiled. He said, "Good morning, Boo." 2 weeks earlier, Arthur Calloway had not known Boo existed. Caroline was a wildlife veterinarian at a large animal rescue sanctuary 40 minutes from the house where she had grown up and where her father now lived. She had come back 4 years ago, when it became clear he could not manage alone. The dementia had settled in, gradually, a name missing, a word gone, the morning medication forgotten. Arthur was still himself in the important ways, his humor, his stubbornness, his instinct for animals. But the days had grown harder to hold on to. Caroline watched her father and did what she could, which was never enough. That is the particular grief of this kind of love. Then, on a Tuesday evening in early October, her colleague, Dr. Janet Cole, called with an unusual request. A water main had burst at the sanctuary, flooding the elephant nursery. The young calves needed emergency relocation, and one of them, a 3-month-old named Boo, could not go to a standard facility. His immune system had been compromised from his time alone in the wild. He needed round-the-clock monitoring and equipment that only Caroline had at home. Would she take him? 2 weeks only, until the nursery was ready. Caroline said yes. She put the phone down and stood in the kitchen for a while without moving. His neurologist had mentioned, more than once, that structured animal interaction could be genuinely therapeutic for patients at Arthur's stage, that the emotional and sensory engagement could reach parts of the mind that ordinary routine could not. She had not planned this, but she had also learned, over 4 years of watching her father diminish, to recognize an opening when one appeared. Boo arrived at midnight, guided quietly into the converted barn while Arthur slept. Caroline spent the night monitoring his vitals by lamplight while the rest of the house was still. She had planned to introduce them properly in the morning, carefully, with explanation. She had not planned on her father waking up at 5:30. Have you ever watched someone you love find their way back to themselves even briefly, even unexpectedly through something completely ordinary? The way they suddenly seem present again, in a way they had not been for a long time. That is what Caroline saw from the kitchen window that morning. Before we go any further, wherever you are watching this right now, drop your city or country in the comments below. It always means something to us to know how far these stories travel. Caroline heard the back door at 5:45. By the time she made it to the kitchen window, Arthur was already halfway across the yard. He moved with a purposefulness she had not seen in months, no shuffling, no hesitation. His whole body angled toward the barn with the certainty of a man who had decided something and was going to act on it. She pressed her hand against the glass and watched. The mist was still thick. The light was just beginning. Arthur stopped about 10 feet from the barn entrance. Boo, who had been raised around humans since his rescue, regarded the old man with calm, curious eyes. His trunk swept forward in that slow, exploratory arc, To anyone who knew elephants, it was a greeting, the gesture of a social animal reaching towards something new. To Arthur, it was a dog's nose. Unusual, expressive, extraordinarily long, and moving in a way no nose he had ever encountered moved before. He reached into his pocket and held out a carrot. Boo took the carrot. Arthur laughed, a real laugh, full and unguarded. He reached up and placed his hand carefully on the side of Boo's face. Caroline stood there until her coffee went cold. When her father came back inside 20 minutes later, he was talking before he reached the door. He had found the most extraordinary dog, he said. Someone had left him in the yard, which was irresponsible, frankly, but the animal seemed fine. Better than fine. Gentle. Intelligent. He had already decided on a name. He said, "I am going to call him Boo." Caroline looked at her father's face. She took in the light in it. She said, "That is a good name." The decision to say nothing to let the misidentification stand was not one she made lightly. She was a scientist. She believed in accuracy. She understood that allowing her father to build a relationship on a fundamental error carried real risks. But she had also watched Arthur that morning. And she had not seen her father that present, that purposeful, that genuinely happy, in longer than she could clearly remember. She called his neurologist that evening. The response was measured but clear as long as both Arthur and Boo remained safe. The therapeutic value of the bond outweighed the cost of the misidentification. Emotional well-being was not a secondary concern. For a patient at Arthur's stage, it was the primary one. So the days began. Arthur woke before dawn every morning for the next 2 weeks. He prepared Boo's meals with the focused attention he had once brought to construction work, the careful measurement, the deliberate sequencing, the refusal to rush a job worth doing properly. He studied Caroline's feeding notes. When the instructions called for formula and fresh vegetables rather than anything resembling ordinary dog food, he concluded, without distress, that Boo was simply a breed with specific dietary requirements, and adapted accordingly. He began training sessions on the 3rd day. He started with sit. Boo, who had spent his first weeks at the sanctuary learning human cues, considered Arthur for a moment and sat. With the slow, settled dignity of an elephant finding its balance, Arthur's face was extraordinary. He produced a piece of carrot, told Boo he was remarkable, and spent the next hour working through every command he had ever taught a dog. Each one met with the attentive, intelligent cooperation of an animal who had, apparently, decided to be patient about the whole business. The training sessions became the centerpiece of Arthur's days. In a life increasingly defined by things forgotten and words lost, this was work he was good at. Work that held, every session restored. In small but real increments, a man who had been slowly stepping back from the world. Caroline watched from the window. She did not go outside. She did not make a sound. She stood there with her hand pressed flat against the glass until the cold of it came through her palm. The evenings were when it was most complete. Arthur had played harmonica his whole adult life, an instrument that dementia, for whatever reason, had never managed to reach. On the 4th evening, he brought it outside and sat in the old wooden chair he had dragged from the barn. And he played Amazing Grace because it was the song his fingers knew first. Boo went still. Not startled. Not afraid. The forward, attentive stillness of a creature genuinely listening. His ears tilted. The tip of his trunk hovered just above the grass. He did not shift his weight for the length of the song. Arthur played another. And another. By the end of the week, Boo would move close as the light faded. and Arthur would play into the dark, with one hand occasionally reaching sideways to rest on the animal's flank. And Boo's trunk would sometimes touch his shoulder in return. And neither of them seemed to require anything else from the evening. On the 12th day, Caroline received the call she had been expecting. The repairs were complete. The nursery was ready. Boo needed to return to the sanctuary by the end of the week. She put the phone down and sat for a while without moving. She had known this was coming. She had told herself every day that she was ready for it. She was not ready for it. She had planned a gradual approach, a vet visit, then an overnight stay. The separation stretched across several days to soften the adjustment, but when she came outside on Wednesday evening, she found her father sitting in his chair with the harmonica in his hands, not playing, looking at the sky with an expression she recognized. He had been unusually quiet all day. He had stayed in the yard longer than usual, and twice she had seen him standing beside Boo with one hand resting on the animal's flank, not moving, not speaking, just present in the way of someone who understands, somewhere below the level of thought, that something is ending. She sat beside him on the grass. He said, quietly, that he thought Boo might be going somewhere soon. That sometimes you could feel when something was changing before anyone told you. He had felt it a few times in his life. He had usually been right. He looked at her. She did not need to say anything. He nodded once. Then he picked up the harmonica and played for a long time. And Boo stood beside him and did not move. Friday came with sharp October light. Arthur spent the morning with Boo unhurried, methodical, the same routines but slower, as if he were trying to keep the morning from ending. The transport arrived at 2 o'clock, and then something happened that Caroline had not anticipated. As the sanctuary staff began preparing the ramp, Arthur grew very still. She had seen this before, the particular quality of stillness that sometimes preceded a moment of clarity, when the fog lifted without warning and left a man briefly, completely, entirely himself. He looked at Boo. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, softly, "He is not a dog, is he?" Caroline stood beside him and shook her head. He was quiet a little longer. Then he said, "He is something much more extraordinary than a dog." She said yes, that was exactly right. He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket pocket. He had been carrying carrots every morning for 2 weeks, and he walked Boo to the ramp himself. The staff had prepared for a difficult loading. They had not prepared for an 81-year-old man walking calmly beside a baby elephant, talking to him in a low, even voice about where he was going and why it was the right place for him to be. Boo walked beside Arthur at his pace. At the ramp, he stopped and turned, and his trunk came up and curled around Arthur's arm in full, holding embrace of an animal that understood, in whatever way animals understand, that this was a goodbye. Arthur stood very still, with his free hand on the side of Boo's face. He said H&A was going to remember him. His voice stayed steady for all of it. The weeks afterward were hard. The structure was gone, and its absence showed everywhere. Arthur's appetite fell. His sleep grew lighter. The purposeful stride that had replaced the shuffle for 2 weeks gradually returned to the shuffle. But the memory held, and that surprised everyone, including the neurologist. When Caroline showed Arthur photographs 3 months later, his recognition was immediate and warm. He described the training sessions, the mornings, the way the harmonica made Boo go still and simply listen. He could not always say how long it had been. He could not always say where Boo had gone, but he knew what they had meant to each other. That part he kept. On quiet evenings, she would sometimes find him in his chair by the barn wall, eyes closed, fingers moving. No harmonica in his hands, just the memory of the music, still finding its way through. A 2023 review in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience confirmed that animal-assisted intervention reduces agitation and anxiety in dementia patients, with documented improvements in cognitive responsiveness. A 2022 study in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease found that regular animal contact increased positive social behavior and reduced confusion episodes. Emotional memory, the kind tied to connection and feeling, is, researchers note, often the last to fade. Arthur and Boo had no protocol. What happened between them was not clinical. It was just real. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you of someone, or something you believe about what love looks like when it finds the form it needs, leave a comment and tell us. Share this with someone who needs a quiet, true story today. Subscribe if you are not already here. There are more of these coming. Every one of them is about a connection that refuses to make sense and happens anyway.